Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Rmalti RM002 GMT. This watch is available from Rmalti Global Store on AliExpress for €281. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in a plastic watch box which is PVC vinyl coated, stitched around the perimeter to a good standard, so very nicely finished, hinge lid, and the interior is fully upholstered with a cream velour fabric to a good standard, and the watch sits in the base on a padded pillow cushion which is also velour upholstered. So nice presentation and nice watch box, bearing in mind this is €281. With regards to the items, one only gets this cardboard warranty card, but on a positive note, it is filled in with the reference number of the piece and the date of purchase, and there's a QR code you can scan. The RM002 GMT is covered by a 12-month international warranty. However, it's wholly unacceptable for Rmalti not to be including an owner's instruction manual to detail the operation of the movement use, which is the Seiko NH34A automatic. So I'd like to see Rmalti introduce owner's instruction manuals, because at this price point, €281, it really should have an owner's manual. With regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Rmalti RM002 GMT. The watch is clearly an homage to the Seiko Marine Master 200 with a GMT complication added. So similar proportions to the Marine Master 200. We have a 41.9mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 48.8mm, a thickness of 14.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the 2-button push clasp. The 2-button push clasp is signed to a high standard with Rmalti design engraved, but however I think they've made an error with this and they should delete design, because the brand name is Rmalti, it's not Rmalti design. This looks like they've copied Pagani design, it has similar Porsche fonts, and I think there's a lack of continuity in the design, because if you look at the branding to the logo on the dial, the Rmalti font is aesthetically pleasing and it matches the Rmalti fonts used on the watch box. But there's no continuity, because the Rmalti on the engraved clasp is Porsche font like Pagani design, so they really need to change the fonts of Rmalti and delete design, and I actually think Rmalti would look better engraved horizontally rather than longitudinally on the clasp, so that's something they need to update. But on a positive note, there's a beautiful lustre to the brushed satin finishing to the solid 316L grade stainless steel. Nice large mirror polished bevel, and that's also done very nicely on the edge, so no sharp corners, no sharp points. It's a very well executed 2-button push clasp. However, as always, I'm going to be critical of it only having 3 micro adjustment holes. I would like to see them drill an extra hole to give 4 micro adjustment holes to better allow for fine tuning the length. Good frame resistance to the 2-button push triggers. Solid milled 316L grade stainless steel interior to the clasp, brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks, no sharp edges, no burrs, and the lustre is very good, so good quality clasp. Snap shut with a nice positive click, a nice heavy gauge to the solid 316L grade stainless steel. So the gauge of the stainless steel is good, it just needs 4 micro adjustment holes and delete the design and change the fonts, and that would really enhance it. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a flat sapphire crystal with AR coating on the underside, and the anti-reflective coating does an excellent job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver frame around the date complication. Now there is a slight clash here, and I think Rmalti could update this to improve it. The handset is brushed satin finished rather than being mirror polished, and I think in order to complement the mirror polished applied indices, they should have also finished the hands with mirror polishing rather than brushed satin finishing. With applied indices and handsets, the finishing should match. So for example, if the indices are mirror polished, the hands should be mirror polished. If the indices are brushed satin finish, the hands should be brushed satin finish. So what we've got here is a clash, because we've got mirror polished indices and brushed satin finish hands, and that really doesn't work. I think they would look better if they were mirror polished. On a positive note, the proportions of the handset are correct. The needlepoint second hand extends to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring. The minute hand is correctly proportioned, it extends to the indices and the white minute ticks on the chapter ring. And also the GMT hour hand, which is contrasting in red with an arrowhead tip, is also long enough to meet the indices. So the size and proportions of the hands are correct. One detail I like, and it's something I only noticed after wearing the watch for some time, is this has a gradient dial. Now in the pictures on the AliExpress listing it looks like it has a blue sunburst dial, but it's actually a gradient dial. The top half of the dial is matte black and then it graduates into sunburst blue, and that actually works very well because it has the Batman bezel with the black top portion and the blue lower portion, and that complements the matte black top of the dial and the sunburst blue lower portion. So they've done a very good job of graduating the dial from black at the top down to sunburst blue, and it actually looks very aesthetically pleasing. It adds interest to the dial. The dial is very well finished, and also the Arabic numerals are printed very well in white, and the minute ticks on the chapter ring are also indexed very well. They've done a very good job of mirror polishing the frame around the date complication. Now it does create a slight shadow, and that's the negative of using a frame around the date window. And we have a white date wheel with black Arabic numerals. The legibility could be improved if they used a black date wheel with white Arabic numerals. The problem with using a white date wheel is one can see the shadow created by the frame, and I think if they lowered the height of the frame that would reduce the shadow and therefore improve the legibility. But having said that, one can clearly read the Arabic numeral on the date is 8 for 8th of the month, so the proportion of the date wheel and the Arabic numerals are correct. I like that the dial isn't over-branded with unnecessary text or specification. For example, we don't have the water resistance rating, which is 200 metres. We simply have the Rmalti brand logo at 12, and then automatic GMT in contrasting red. And the GMT in red complements the GMT contrasting hour hand. So the dial execution is very good, the legibility is good, and I like the minimal text, just automatic and GMT, just the right amount of information. With regards to the bezel, it's very well done, and I want to give due credit to Rmalti because this is a ceramic bezel insert which is fully inlaid with BGW9 superluminova to a high standard, and it really does look like a very well finished bezel. Nice glossy finish to the ceramic, and also they've done a good job of where the black and the blue portions meet underneath the 6. The line splits directly across the 6, and it also directly splits across the 1800 hours. This is something that often other brands get incorrect. The portions are uneven. For example, there is too much black or too much blue, and the bezel doesn't split directly across halfway on the 6, but they've actually done a very good job of the black and the blue bezels being exactly 50% each. So very nicely finished. Now the bezel itself is solid 316L grade stainless steel, gear tooth profile to it, and very good attention to detail because the top edge, which has a bevel on it or chamfer, is mirror polished, and the flanks to the bezel are actually brushed satin finish. So we've got two finishes on the gear tooth teeth, as you can see, mirror polished on the top edge, brushed satin finish, and the internals of it, or the interior of the teeth, are brushed satin finish. Now, it's a very grippy and tactile bezel, but it doesn't have any sharp corners or points. They've deburred it to a very high standard. And I would actually say that this is better quality finishing than on a Seiko bezel, so they deserve credit because it's very aesthetically pleasing the way it catches the light, but it also feels very good because it doesn't have any sharp teeth as per a coin edge or scalloped bezel. So the gear tooth bezel looks good, feels good, and it is finished to a very high standard. The case finishing on this piece is one of the strongest points. It's something I really like. We've got brushed satin finishing to the tops of the lugs, and that contrasts with the mirror polishing to the flanks. Nice large undercut to the head of the piece. As you can see, the undercut to the flank is polished to a flawless standard, and that contrasts with the flank, which is brushed satin finish to the centre section. Holes in the lugs mean that it's easy to remove the end links with the spring bar tool. One can press in a end-link pushpin tool, and that's very good. It makes it very easy to exchange the bracelet, and it gives the watch a real tool watch aesthetic as per the Marine Master 200. So very nice case finishing. The solid end links are a good tight fit to the case, no play, and brushed satin finish to a very high standard. With regards to the bracelet, beautiful lustre to the 316L grade stainless steel bracelet, as you can see. No sharp edges to it, and also brushed satin finish to the flanks, which give it a nice tool watch aesthetic. 20 down to 18 is the correct taper, bearing in mind this is a 41.9mm head of the piece. If it were a 40, I would say it needs more of a taper, 20 to 16, which is the industry standard, but 20 to 18 is good for a 41.9. So I'll give you a wrist shot, and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report it fits my 8-inch wrist with no difficulty whatsoever. There is actually enough links in the bracelet to fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist, and bear in mind I've got it on micro adjustment position 3, so this is maximum extension, so it will easily fit an 8.5-inch wrist, and I'm delighted to see Rmalti have included enough links for collectors with a larger wrist. Very well balanced, it feels comfortable despite the heft. Now it is a very heavy piece, 188 grams with all the links in the oyster style bracelet, but it does feel very balanced, and also nice curved profile with the undercut to the flank, and that means when one flexes the hand and wrist, the undercut to the case, it doesn't dig into the wrist. Sometimes with large pieces they have a sharp edge on the flank, and when you flex the wrist, the sharp edge to the case digs into the wrist, but this actually has a nice large mirror polished undercut on both flanks, and that means it actually articulates very well. So although it has male end links rather than female pitted end links, it is a very snug fit. We don't have an abhorrent gap beneath the case and the lugs. So very comfortable to wear, very well balanced, and I like the 20:18 proportions to the taper. The clasp is low profile and it's the correct proportion. So absolutely beautiful to look at. Now, I really like the graduated dial, matte black at the top, graduating to sunburst blue, and that complements the Batman bezel, which also looks similar to the blueberry bezel used on the 5KX GMT. So the colour tone match is very good between the sunburst blue and the blue portion of the Batman bezel, and the matte black on the top portion of the dial complements the matte black bezel. So very good looking. I like the symmetry and the proportions of the applied indices, and the AR coating works very well. Flat sapphire crystal is the correct choice because it is a tall piece at 14.4mm. Had they used a double dome sapphire crystal, it would have made it 15mm and therefore too top heavy and too tall. It is slightly difficult to get this underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. 13mm is the sweet spot. At 14.4 it's slightly tall, but that's something to bear in mind. Now the thing is, I really like the bevel on the edge of the sapphire crystal. If you look, when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see the edge on the crystal catches the light. So it's just absolutely gorgeous. Good looking piece to wear, feel good factor is good, surprisingly comfortable despite the 188 grams heft, and I really like the proportions of it. 41.9, 48.8 is very close to perfection. As you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider 48mm to be the sweet spot. That is the perfect lug to lug measurement. At 48.8 it is very close to that. So very well proportioned piece, very comfortable, feel good factor is good, good looking. Right, so let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel as per a dive piece. Now, strictly speaking, this is a GMT complication piece, so it should have a bidirectional rotating bezel rather than unidirectional. I appreciate that Rmalti have had to use the cost-cutting measure of using 120 click unidirectional bezel as per the other Marine Master 200 homage, which is fair enough. So let's test the action. Nice light resistance to it. Now it feels smooth. It feels lighter than a Seiko 5KX, which you might be familiar with. It feels more like a Rolex Submariner Dates bezel action. That's the level of resistance. It feels like a light bezel action. The clicks aren't as loud and audible as on a Seiko 5KX. They feel quieter, feel smoother. One can feel the ratcheting mechanism. Now it feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation, which is good. It feels smooth. No lateral side-side play whatsoever. However, we do have some slight back play, as you can see. I'm just going to check it in 4 positions for confirmation. Now, it does have back play, but I'll describe it as acceptable. It's half a click of back play, and it's certainly not the worst I've seen. So I think it's okay, although there is room for refinement. I think Rmalti could improve upon this and tighten it up. Now it does feel like a light bezel action. I think if they made the ratcheting spring stiffer, that would tighten up the back plate and remove it. They could delete it. It is slight, but it is there. It's present all the way around the dial, so I would describe it as half a click of back play, which is okay, but I would like to see them tighten up on it. Let's check the alignment. Perfect. The Lume's triangle aligns correctly with the 12 o'clock index on the dial and the white minute ticks. So no lateral side-to-side play, half a click of back play and perfect alignment. So it is a good bezel action, but it's not perfect. There is room for improvement. With regards to the crown, it's knurled finish, solid 316L grade stainless steel, engraved with the Rmalti R. The screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 metres. So let's test the action. Now it feels smooth, but it's not silky smooth. Again, I think there is room for improvement with regards to the machining of the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. It does work well, does feel smooth, but there is some friction. So one can feel the friction of the threading. It's not silky smooth, but it is good. So in the first position, one can manually wind the Seiko Caliber NH34A automatic to top it up to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. The architecture of the NH34A is the same as the 35A, so there's no discernible difference when manually winding the 34A. It feels exactly the same as a 35A. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up, so it does feel smooth. It does feel pleasant to manually wind. Pulling it out to the first click position is the date setting position. And when one rotates the crown anti-clockwise, if you look closely at the date window, that advances the quick set complication. So it feels exactly the same as an NH35A. One can feel each day of the month clicking over with a nice positive click. Now, the 34A, the only difference between that and the 35A is the addition of a GMT hour hand on the cannon pinion. And the GMT hour hand is driven off the date complication. There's a gear added to the date wheel, and the date wheel gear drives the GMT hour hand. So in the date setting position, rotating the crown anti-clockwise advances the date complication. Rotating the crown clockwise in the date setting position advances the GMT hand. So as you can see, one can move the GMT hour hand independently of the other hands on the watch, and the watch continues to run. It doesn't hack in the GMT hour hand setting position or the date complication setting position. The second hand continues to run. So clockwise rotates the GMT hour hand. Now it does also click with nice positive clicks on each hour, as you can see. So it is an absolute pleasure to advance it by 1 hour. Each hour on the GMT hour hand has a nice positive click. The quick setting of the GMT hour hand feels exactly the same as the date complication. That's the sensation of the 34A. And the alignment is correct, as you can see. It resets bang on every hour of the month for the 24 hours. And you can also cycle it through the 24 hours very quickly, which is very good. So it works very well. Alignment's good, no backplay in it, nice positive clicks. I really like the functionality of it, and rotating it anti-clockwise advances the quick set complication. Putting it out to the second click on the crown is the time setting position. Now if you look at the second hand, you can see I've now hacked the movement. So like the 35A, one can set the time precisely to the second, and one can also cycle through the 24 hours to move the GMT hour hand that way as well. No backplay, clockwise and anti-clockwise, it feels silky smooth. No discernible difference between the 34A and the 35A. It feels exactly the same as the 35A. Absolute pleasure to set the time. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again. So let's test screwing it back down. Immediate thread pickup, but there is some resistance. One can feel the friction of the rubber O-ring inside the crown and the second rubber O-ring around the winding stem within the stainless steel crown tube compressing against the stainless steel. So there is room for improvement on it. It is smooth but not silky smooth, but I think it's good enough. Right, so I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, which provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 meters. Milled slots are well finished, no sharp edges. The circumference is mirror polished to a high standard. Now it is a high profile case back, as one would expect, because it needs to house the NH34A, which is a thick movement. It's thicker than the 35A due to the addition of the GMT complication. So it does have a bubble back case back, and they have embossed the centre section with a line, as you can see. So it is a tall case back, and that does add significant thickness, and that really does result in the 14.4mm thickness, engraved to a high standard with the specification and the reference number of the piece. And also they've done a good job of embossing the line in the centre section. No sharp edges to it, concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the centre section. So it is a very well executed, comfortable case back against the wrist, but it is very thick, and that's something to bear in mind. It does make the watch stand tall on the wrist at 14.4mm. The solid end links are a good tight fit to the head of the piece, flawless mirror polishing to the underside to the head of the piece, and flawless mirror polishing to the undercuts, which are large in the flanks. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is very impressive. BGW9 Superluminova, we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers. I'm pleased to see that Rmalti haven't used the cost-cutting measure of 3 to 4 layers. They've done an excellent job of fully inlaying the ceramic bezel inserts with BGW9. The Arabic numerals are clearly legible, as are the other hour markers. The proportions of the applied indices are very good, perfect colour tone match. The blue colour on the bezel, the hands and the indices match correctly. Now, interestingly, it looks like they've used a different tone of lume on the GMT hour hand tip. With the triangle, it looks like it's got some C3, and I think they've made the correct decision on that, because I can understand they want to make the GMT hour hand look slightly different to the other hands and also the second hand. So the Lume performance is good, it's glowing very brightly. It looks very similar to Seiko Lume Bright in terms of performance, in terms of the brightness and the length of time. And they deserve credit, because this is €281. They could have used the cost-cutting measure of not using BGW9 on the ceramic and just using white paint. It's more expensive to inlay the Arabic numerals and the hour markers with BGW9, but they've done a good job. It's clearly 5 to 6 layers on the bezel, as well as the hands and the indices. So I'm very impressed with the quality of the BGW9. Very aesthetically pleasing, legibility is good, so I like it. Right, so let's discuss the movement used, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. Now, the NH34A is a new movement for 2022. So, as detailed, the architecture of the 34A is the same as the 35A. The only discernible difference is that it has a GMT hour hand added to the cannon pinion, and that increases the stack height of the cannon pinion. The handsets are set higher due to fitting the extra hand on, and the GMT hour hand is driven off the date complication. The gearing is driven off the gear that drives the GMT complication, as I've demonstrated. So rotating the crown anti-clockwise advances the quickset date complication. Rotating the crown clockwise advances the GMT hour hand independently. So it's a reliable movement, but as yet it's unproven because it's new. But as the 35A has similar architecture and is incredibly reliable, I am confident the 34A will also be incredibly reliable. Like the 34A, it has 24 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications, quickset date complication, which I've demonstrated. The stated accuracy of the 34A is the same as the 35A, -20 to +40 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Rmalti are well regulating the 34As they're using. This one is running consistently at +8 seconds per day, which is well within the -20 to +40 stated accuracy. +8 from the 34A is good enough. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable, so no negatives to the 34A whatsoever. I like that one can rotate the GMT hour hand and indexes with each click on the hours, or alternatively one can cycle it around without adjusting the time, so it's good that it operates independently via the date complication. So it's accurate. The reliability is unknown, but I'm confident in it because it's based upon the 35A. It feels absolutely pleasant to manually wind, set the date, set the time. It feels exactly the same as the 35A, so I really like it, and I think it's a credible alternative to the Hangzhou caliber 6460, which was the popular choice for GMT complication pieces. Alternatively, Pagani Design used the Pearl DG5833 GMT, which is an unreliable movement, and it's also not accurate. So in terms of quality, I think the 34A is equal quality to the 6460, but I actually like that it's based upon the architecture of the 35A, which is a very reliable, very robust and durable movement. So I would prefer a 34A versus the Hangzhou 6460. I think Rmalti have made the correct decision by choosing the 34A over the 6460. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €281 is the price of this piece. I think it's excellent quality, but I think the value is poor. To make this more competitive, Rmalti need to reduce the price to circa €250 or less, and therefore I think that this would make it excellent quality and excellent value. But however, I can't say it's good value or excellent value. At €281, it is pushing the price because it's very close to San Martin level in price point, but this isn't quite San Martin level quality with regards to the bracelet and the clasp. It does need some refinement. €250 would be a more correct price, and ideally below that. But I think the quality is excellent. The specification is loaded. We've got AR coating, BGW9 throughout. The ceramic bezel insert is fully loomed with BGW9, 200 meters. The NH34A is a good movement. So I like it. Now, the only thing that really needs to be addressed is a slight half click of backplate in the bezel. So the QC needs to be tightened up on the bezel. The crown also could be made smoother to make it silky smooth, but on a positive note, there's no lateral side plate and the alignment is correct, so they've nearly got it right. So I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Rmalti RM002 GMT. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.